This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And Giff, how you feeling?
Well, we got a big topic tonight, and it's such a wide-ranging, popular show, this Game of Thrones, that I'm worried that I'm not gonna do it justice tonight. So,
I can tell you right
pick.
now that me and Pete won't do it justice.
Yeah,
I think
so
we're
that's the
planning
other
on
thing I'm worried
covering
about.
every episode in detail in our 1 hour show here, aren't we?
Right. Well, and before we get into that, we got one shout out to get into. We've seen a spike down in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Thank you
Council
to whoever
Bluffs, Iowa.
may be downloading, whether it's a bot or a real breathing person. Thank you.
Giff
Thank
did
you.
notice that there is a school for the deaf there, so
Yes.
we think maybe that's why they're listening to the show, because they can't hear us.
That's right.
They can handle it. It's a little easier. Yeah.
I
They-
think it's right on the border, isn't the Nebraska border?
Nebraska.
Like that.
Yeah, it's the Omaha Council Bluffs metropolitan area.
Megaplex.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So we could we're reaching across state lines possibly. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thanks for listening down there, or at the very least, smashing the old download button and give us a few extra.
Yeah, hopefully you're a real
Omaha is
person.
actually a pretty cool town to visit. Have you been there?
It's somewhere
If
in
you
Middle
haven't,
America.
You should.
Peyton Manning's a big fan.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's good
We
stuff.
used to go actually when I was a kid. My parents had friends that lived in Omaha, and I did spend a couple weekends there.
Yeah.
We went there. They've got a really cool bridge you can walk across that goes over the border from Nebraska to Iowa and back.
Council Bluffs.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's great.
Sweet.
It's a little
So
bit it's a little bit trendier than what you might think of when you think of Omaha, Nebraska. Let's say that.
all
Well,
right
and
then.
Sid Hartman always used to say that if we lost any of our pro sports teams, we would just be a cold Omaha, and that wasn't a compliment.
No,
Wow.
that would
Minneapolis.
not be.
Might
Sid
be
cuts deep.
old Omaha, but
That was
today,
always the big threat to pay for those stadiums because we didn't want to become a cold Omaha.
Sure.
And now he's dead.
Yep.
Well, shall we get into it here, folks?
Yes.
All right, so we are still in 2014. So in 2014, the fourth season of Game of Thrones came out. This, of course, was a juggernaut show on HBO. Fantasy, I suppose, would be a good way to put it. A medieval fantasy type show, for those who
Medieval
don't know.
fantasy is the way I would describe it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Nailed it with that one. So my memory of this show, I was one of those holdouts that did not watch it. Was kind of proud of myself for not, watching it, because everybody was, it was all over the internet. It was, a lot of people talked about it. So I did not watch the show until I caved in 2017, and I binge watched it all the way through and got done with season 7, and then came to realize that season 8 wasn't going to come out for like a year and a half. So I was kind of disappointed that I just didn't wait another, year to watch the whole thing. So I had to wait with everybody else for the last season. I know a lot of people are very, very disappointed in how this series wrapped up. What I say to that is, when it's that popular of a show, that many people are watching it, nobody's, you're not going to make everybody happy with the way it ended.
Just like Seinfeld.
Well, Seinfeld, just about anything,
Sopranos.
But I look at it this way. It's like having a pet. It's going to end bad at the end. You're going to be sad, when the pet finally leaves you. But that doesn't take away all the fun that you had watching it and the experience of this great show. So
It's a very depressing turn this episode has already taken.
no, it's not depressing at all.
It's very poignant.
Proponent
Brad,
of
I
of
just want to
pet
say that
ownership.
I hope your dog Larry is not listening right now, because
No, he's
The
behind
dog-
3 closed doors, so we don't hear him.
the dogs have super good hearing though.
Yeah. He's behind 3 closed doors.
I would say
Is
it'd
that
be
what it
worse
is?
if my 11-year-old dog was hearing it because he is winding down to a slow doggy.
Oh,
Oh,
but we still love him, right? It's still
Probably-
a good
Well,
dog.
probably
yeah,
can't
it's
hear.
wonderful.
Of course.
It's going to be a very,
Exactly.
very sad day.
Yeah. So,
Anyway,
and
going
you know, this show was one that I absolutely love. So, like I said, I finished season 7 with about a year and a half before year 8. So by the time this 8th season came out, I leading up to it, of course, with my forgetfulness, I actually rewatched all 7 seasons before
Wow.
season 8 was done, and then I binged season 8 all in one shot. So
That is similar to when we watched Better Call Saul and we watched it all the way through.
mhm.
And then the final season was kind of airing at the time, and we hadn't really started, didn't really think about getting it recorded or anything, and never did. And once we got done with season 5, there was just no time in sight when they were actually going to allow you to watch it if you didn't see it when it was on.
Right.
Couldn't get it on the DVR, wasn't replayed, wasn't on Netflix. And we just sat around and forgot a lot of it. And then finally we did get to see that last season.
Mhm.
So I feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah. So could I ask, you guys have never watched this series?
That's
Not-
not true.
At all.
I watched a half an episode once
Oh, you did?
before. Yep, I did watch I got like halfway through episode 1, and then I got pulled away to something else. I really didn't feel like I was getting into it or anything like that. It didn't pull me in. Maybe I needed to stick with it longer. But to your point, I did watch part of an episode.
Okay.
I think
So
I
this was-
remember there being some chasing through the snowy woods at some point.
Yep.
Something like
Winter
that.
is coming. I even know
Yeah,
that.
well, that was the
Yes.
first episode, so it's
It was
like
up in Winterfell, yes.
winter was
the
already
king,
there.
the king came to visit the Stark family in Winterfell. Yeah. So,
Sure.
Well, I have
what
never.
did you think? What did you
Oh.
think of this view? Did you watch just this episode? We're going to be covering season 4, episode 2 in tonight. So the assignment obviously was to watch that episode. Pete, did you happen to watch any others?
No, but this episode was good. Like, I didn't know the characters or what was going on, but it was interesting and it pulled me in. This one actually kind of pulled me in probably better than that first one did. So it was interesting.
Brad?
I have never seen this show. I never had any interest in it. As you described it, this is a genre that it just checks no boxes for me.
Okay.
I don't like fantasy. Like the only thing I've ever really gotten into was kind of Harry Potter.
Brad has no
I don't like
fantasies.
medieval time period pieces very often like that. I can't stand when people have weird names, which you've got all over the place
This is
here.
all over the place. Yep.
I can't follow them, and it's a huge cast, so it's just very overwhelming to me.
Mhm.
So that's why I never cared to watch it. I heard all about it, but I was interested to see, since I had to watch one now, would I
Mhm.
be intrigued, and what would I find by watching it? So,
As
Can I ask-
a
do you want to know what I
former-
thought?
As a former RTR knight, I thought maybe you'd be more into medieval culture, but
No, I am not. So,
Awkward
for
silence
example,
then.
my family all went to the Renaissance Festival once together when I was like 10 years old. But my parents and brother and sister were much older and much more able to make up their own minds on things. And all 5 of us vowed, like, this is the worst thing we've ever been to, and we will never go back. And
I
still
completely
feel
agree.
like that.
It never even crossed my mind to make any sort of connection between the Renaissance Festival and Game of Thrones.
Well, it's
It
got that
just seems
medieval.
like
It's medieval culture. Yes.
How is it
sure,
not connected?
Yeah.
sure, but yeah, I don't know. Everything
So,
I've seen and heard
anyway-
about Game of Thrones, not even
Right.
close to it. Okay.
I was going to try to watch the 2, since this was the second episode of the season. I was definitely going to try to watch the first episode of the season and then the one after. But I've been very busy celebrating my wife's birthday all weekend,
Yes.
so I never got around to any other ones. And so I only saw this episode. Now, I will say, before we get into much detail, It did not draw me in at first. Like that opening scene, I like had no idea who was doing what, and I feel like, unless I'm confused, it really didn't apply to anything else that happened after that. I don't even know, were those characters even in it?
Yeah.
However,
the beginning
once
doesn't really.
once
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage came on, he started talking, and then the wedding part, I did like. I mean, I like enjoyed it. Like there was some good stuff in there, and I mean, it was like, okay, this is. I'm not going to probably watch the whole series, but like,
Sure.
I did not hate it. So that's where I'm at.
Well,
I
and
do like Peter Dinklage. I think
Yeah.
he's fun to watch, and I think he's an amazing actor.
Mhm.
And his character just pulls you in just by itself. The way that he does the role, and of course he's an intriguing personality and all of that.
Yeah. So, what was I going to say? So we'll just kind of go through the episode. I was just going to give a quick little a reminder. So the fourth season begins. Jaime Lannister is back at King's Landing after losing his hand. Him and Brienne of Tarth are back. You've got Stannis Baratheon.
See, you're losing me with these names right away.
is-
Brienne,
I'm
Brienne,
retching
come on.
here.
Brienne, come on.
He's
Brian.
got his
Of
group
Hearth?
That's
over
Brian.
at oh God, I can't remember the Dragonstone, I believe it is. And of course, the big lead in to this season is the impending nuptials between Marjorie and Joffrey. So we also see Oberyn Martell for the first time. He arrives for the royal wedding, and he's got a bit of a beef with the Lannisters, like a lot of other people, because his sister was married to the Mad King, and she was, of course, raped. Her children were killed. Those are his sister and nieces and nephews. So he's got a bit of a bone to pick with the Lannister family. And there's an awesome episode later on in this season where there's a fight between him and the Mountain. So I picked this episode, this second episode, The Lion and the Rose, because it does encompass the wedding, the royal wedding, and the death of Joffrey, which you guys aren't familiar with the show, but I'm assuming you got a pretty good feel during this episode for what kind of person Joffrey is.
He had
I
a very
wrote down-
punchable face. I wanted to punch him the entire time that he was on the screen.
To use a
I
word
hated the
from
guy.
last week with Gone Girl, I wrote down this king is a real twat.
Yes, it's a great
Okay.
great term for him. So we'll just kind of run through it here.
Not to be confused with super twat.
So it starts out, we see Ramsay Ramsay Bolton, and his girlfriend Miranda, and along with Theon, who is now Reek, after he's been relieved of his private parts
No, your real name.
by Ramsay. They are running through the woods, chasing this poor woman with bows and arrows and dogs, and you kind of see the state that Reek is in, basically a shell of himself. And I was never a big fan of Theon. I thought he was always such a D-bag, but you do feel for this guy who's basically been stripped of everything that made him who he was. So we end up back in King's Landing, and we see Jaime and Tyrion are having dinner or having lunch. And I love this scene because, again, the scenes between these two brothers are always are the only sweet relationship in the Lannister family. Jaime, of course, has been banging his sister Cersei, the twins. Their kids are Joffrey is their son. They've got another son, and their daughter is off in Dorne. So all legitimate, illegitimate children. That's a whole big storyline with Joffrey coming to the throne. So Jaime's kind of a despicable character, but he's always been good to his brother. Tyrion, of course, being a dwarf, is hated by his father, hated by his sister because of course, their mother died giving birth to him. So he's always got, pun intended, the short end of the stick from his entire family, his entire life. But it was just a nice conversation between them because Jaime, having lost his hand, he's of course a great swordsman, and now he has to learn to fight with his left hand. And Tyrion helps him out, sets him up with Bronn as a training partner so that Jaime is able to gain some of his pride back, being able to be a warrior again. So
I did. One of the two quotes I wrote down was from this part here, where Tyrion says,
that's how it's pronounced, Tyrion.
"A toast to the proud Lannister children, the dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness." I thought that was pretty funny.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that sums
I
it up
liked it.
pretty well.
Self-aware and everything. I always like that kind of stuff.
Sure. And again, we go back to a side story in this episode with the Boltons, back to the Dreadfort, and this conversation between Roose Bolton and Ramsay, and they've been basically given control of the North, but they have to take it for themselves. So this comes into a whole storyline of Reek. Theon has divulged that Stark, Bran Stark, is still alive, and if they can capture him, that'll give them a trading piece in order to take over Winterfell. So you're gonna have this huge thing into finding Bran Stark. Of course, nobody knows where Bran is. And he has been on a quest now to get to his stepbrother at Castle Black. And he's with Hodor, along with, who are the other two folks with him? Shoot, I had this written down. Sorry. Jojen and Mira. So you guys may recognize the actor Jojen from a couple movies or a couple things we've talked about on this show. He played Sam in Love Actually, and was also
Thomas Brody Sangster. I saw
Yes.
him.
and was also in the Queen's Gambit, which
You're right.
which
I'm
we
with
covered
you.
on the show here.
Which I just saw. They just renewed for a second season coming up here.
For
The Queen's Gambit.
no kidding.
Yeah, I just saw that today.
Wow.
Wow. When's that supposed to be coming out?
I do not know.
Well, I'll be looking for that.
But yes, I did notice and meant to bring that up that I did recognize at least one person.
Sure. So he's on his quest. They find the weirwood tree, and of course he's got the sight. And he touches the weirwood tree, and we see all these things. And at the time, you don't necessarily know everything that he sees because some of it's in the past, some of it's in the future. This is the first time we see a glimpse of the Night King. So that's exciting. We see a shadow of a dragon flying over King's Landing, which of course we'll see in the last season of the show, but you're not sure if that's something that happened in the past or something that'll come in the future. So you're starting to see Bran, hone his powers to become the three-eyed raven. So he's of course on his quest as well.
The three-eyed raven.
The three-eyed raven.
It's one of my favorite tropes as well.
There's just so much. There's so many side stories going on throughout this entire show.
I did like the scene where the dude is learning to fight left-handed because he lost his hand. First of all, it kind of gave me a little bit of a Princess Bride feel. Just the whole.
I thought the
I'm
same
not
thing.
right-handed.
Right.
But the quote there was the guy said, "Are we being too loud?" And the one said, "Well, right here is where I fuck his wife. She's a screamer, that one. If they don't hear her, they won't hear us."
Right. I love Bronn. His character is absolutely great. He's such a smart ass. Him and Tyrion are just two peas in a pod. So yeah, he's one of my faves throughout this series as well. We also see I'll hit the other side story in this one, Stannis Baratheon and the Red Woman, and of course she is still burning people at the stake for the God of Light, and that's just such a crazy storyline because Stannis really doesn't believe in her God, but he sees the power that she has and knows that she may be able to help him in his quest for the Iron Throne. So he keeps her around, to, the peril of just about everybody around him. But the big reason, of course, for picking this episode is the wedding. So we'll get into that. So Tyrion has his girlfriend Shae, and of course his sister is always trying to kill his jive, so he can't keep her in King's Landing because she's in danger once they find out that he's going around with this whore, as they call her. She's going to be put to death. Of course, at this point, Tyrion is married to Sansa. So that's his wife. So he needs to try to get rid of Shae, not because he wants to, but because he wants her to be safe and not, get hung by, his father and his sister. So we've got that whole side story there. We see a meet and greet with Joffrey, and people are bringing him gifts prior to the wedding. And of course, he's given a book by his uncle Tyrion, which he doesn't give a crap about. He's such a pile of crap. His dad, or his grandfather Tywin, gives him a new sword for the upcoming wedding, which he takes out and proceeds to chop this book up in front of his uncle, and then also points out that it reminds him of when Ned Stark's was beheaded, and of course you got Sansa sitting right there, and that's Ned's daughter. I mean, he just is such an asshole at every turn. He tries his best to just he's so despicable.
I have a question about
Yeah.
this king.
Yeah.
So is he in the entire series up until this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So
He's
this is
in
like a big
episode
deal
1,
at the
season
end.
1.
Well, right,
Yep.
I know it's a big deal. So that's why, because what I read was that like several important characters had just been killed off recently, which was like a
Mhm.
big surprise.
Yeah,
So
the
is that
Red
like
Wedding-
something that like does the cast kind of rotate? And is that something that happens, or do most people stick around from the beginning to end?
So the Red Wedding would have been the season before. That was when Robb Stark and his family were killed at his wedding. That was maybe one of the biggest surprises up to that point in the series, because these were major characters from the beginning of the series, and a bunch of them were killed off in this wedding. It was a huge surprise. There are a lot of big characters that die throughout the series, but there are so many characters that have long arcing storylines over many seasons. So yeah, there's people obviously die off or killed, but there's so many other characters available that this thing's able to continue on. There are a lot that make it all the way through.
Okay.
But
So this
there-
king had been on since the beginning. He wasn't like somebody that entered late.
So at the beginning of the series, Cersei is married to Robert Baratheon, and he's the king at the time, and he has his children, and Joffrey is the oldest son. So when he passes, Joffrey is next in line for the throne. The problem is all of Cersei's kids are not the king's kids. they're actually Jaime's kids through incest. And, this farce is just continued on. Basically, it's the worst kept secret in, all of King's Landing that, these kids are, not the king's kids, but, the brother of the queen kids, So anyway, that's a whole story in amongst itself. And that's one of the main things throughout the whole series is who is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. So,
So when you're watching this,
Yeah.
there's no inclination that this guy was going to die.
no, you knew something bad was going to happen. I mean, so we get to the dinner after the wedding, and you've got Joffrey is continuing to humiliate his uncle Tyrion. He brings out these dwarfs to reenact this battle of the Five Kings, which is, disrespectful to just about everybody at this table. It's disrespectful to his wife, his wife's family. It's disrespectful to Tyrion's wife, Sansa Stark. It's everything about it is awful, and you can feel this tension just building. So you don't know what's going to happen, but you kind of feel like something awful is going to happen at some point in this episode. So no, I had no idea the first time that I watched it that this was the one where Joffrey dies. I did know that he doesn't make it through the series, but it was a surprise when it came about. So this, of course, sets into motion now that Joffrey is poisoned. Cersei believes that Tyrion is the one who poisoned him, and we see that Sansa gets swept away for an escape because, of course, she's going to be blamed as well. So they're trying to get her to safety. So it's kind of up in the air who was all responsible for Joffrey's death.
That was what I was going to ask, because he literally points as he's dying. He points to Tyrion, and so that's obviously where the blame is going. And it's set up to make you think that that's him, but once you watch more episodes, you don't know. So
what I came to believe, and I'm sure this is well known throughout the universe of Game of Thrones. There's an advisor to the king, Littlefinger, that I believe he was had a hand in it. He always had a hard on for Sansa Stark.
I get it. Littlefinger had a hand in it.
Thank you. Because he ends up being the one that helps to rescue Sansa away from King's Landing. And then, of course, Olenna Tyrell, the grandmother of the queen, the new queen, had a hand in it as well, because she hates the Lannisters. Everybody hates the Lannisters, and was kind of fed up with it and did not want to see her granddaughter, subjected to a life of marrying this psychopath, So it's I thought it was an awesome episode. It's one of the highest ranked episodes in the series. I think on IMDb it's got a ranking of 9.7.
I noticed that it's like 9.5 or 9.7 maybe.
Yeah. So it's a great episode. That wedding brings together so many characters into one spot that normally aren't together, which was a lot of fun to see. This show is spread across, an entire continent, across the sea to, Dorne, where we've got Daenerys is across the sea at this point yet, hasn't made her way over to Westeros. So this was a pretty big moment in the series, just having so many major characters in one place.
And I will say that even though I had no idea really, who anybody was or why he was acting this way, the scenes between him and Tyrion, the whole humiliating him, it was very tense. That's the part that was watching it without knowing anything. I'm like, oh, okay, this is I wanted to see what was going to happen, and that was the part that made me most interested, of course.
Well, and Joffrey is so
impetuous. Because I always love when there's a bad guy that you hate, and that guy was certainly hateable.
Well, and there's plenty of them in this entire series, but you never knew what he might do, Joffrey. So as he's humiliating his uncle, and his uncle's doing everything he can to put on a good face, like when he gets the
Right.
wine poured on him, he goes, "Oh, such a, shame to, waste
I've
such a fine vintage." And
Yes.
Is he
You know-
related to King Joffrey Joffer from Coming to America?
I don't know.
I
That's a
got
good,
where you're going
good
with
question.
Two
Good
kings named Joffrey?
Mm-hmm. So I know you guys hadn't seen the show before. It's such a huge when we did our top fives, this year was such a big one for TV for me. So I really wanted to, cover. Pete took Fargo, which was a great pick. I wanted to at least cover Game of Thrones at some point, and this episode landing in 2014 was my opportunity. So
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So I said I'll probably never watch it, but I will say if I do ever watch it, this is the kind of show, the kind of like characters genre that my son does like. Now he's 17. I know there's a ton of sex, and then you go
Yep.
ahead and picked an episode that had no nudity in it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Come on. Boo.
But if he could I watch it with him? Would it be too uncomfortable and weird? Or like if he did say he wanted to watch it, it would give us something, to do together. Like if I was gonna watch it, that's why I would watch it. So
Right.
what is your recommendation?
For a 17-year-old, I think it would be completely okay. Honestly.
Well, of course, but like I'm saying, like for him and me to watch it together. Anything weird with that, or
I mean, there is a lot of nudity, but it's not.
and keep in mind he's
I
gay.
hate to say that it's not nudity for nudity's sake, because there is a lot of nudity. But that's the other thing too about this show. It's very inclusive as far as lifestyles.
Right. Okay.
So it's not just, and I mean, there's a lot of deviant crap in there because you've got, these two main characters of Jaime and Cersei being twins that are, are incestuous. But no, I think there is a lot of nudity, but it's not the focus of the show. It's in there, but it's not like this is what the show's about. You know what I mean?
All
So,
right. Well, you know what?
yeah.
I might watch it. I don't know.
Yeah. I would hope, I would absolutely love it if you did. I think you would. It's one of those shows that as you get into it, it's like, oh my God, absolutely amazing. One of the things I will say, my favorite character throughout the entire run of this series is Arya Stark. And the end of the Red Wedding is kind of her beginning of her story. And her path to becoming who she becomes. And I think it's just such a fun arc for her, becoming basically a silent assassin. So I love her character. She was not in this episode at all. I know she's comes back in. She was in the first episode of the season. She's in the next episode, episode 3. She is at this point out and about with the Hound. But her character throughout the series is absolutely my favorite. So,
All right.
I would recommend it. So, you guys got anything else to say about your viewing of this episode?
I think we covered it for me.
All right. So, what we're gonna do? Oh, you know what we need to do? We need to figure out who's picking second and third here.
Oh,
Yep.
All right. We'll do it quick on air.
Yeah,
I got
there you go.
odds.
I got evens.
1, 2, 3.
Looks
It's
like
even.
evens.
I got the
All
number
right.
2 pick.
So we got me and Pete and Brad. So
There's only
in
one that I really care about here, so hopefully I'll still get 1/3.
So in honor of the death of Joffrey on this episode, my top 5 for tonight is going to be your favorite villain deaths. And
Wait.
the way-
Well, this is important
yes,
because it said satisfying.
Yeah.
death.
satisfying. Yes.
Because not all of mine are villains. Some are the way they died was hey, that was kind of nice how they did that. So
Oh,
that's
interesting.
That's it. I took it.
That's not what I
took
was
it-
thinking, but actually, I do have one like that on here. I have one like that
Okay.
actually.
I took it a couple of different ways. I've got some villains. I have some that it's a very likable character, a good guy, but how it ended, it was just very nice, or
Sure.
how it happened.
So this is-
Well, I guess you'll have to decide, Pete.
This
Okay,
is
well, I just want to put that disclaimer on there that some of my picks might be that's the case. So, and
Okay.
one of them is, a couple of them are funny.
Sure.
I have one
So,
or two of those.
yeah.
So this is going to be across television and
Three, I have
movies.
three.
And if you guys were bigger Game of Thrones fans, honestly, we could come up with 15 names just from Game of Thrones that would be pretty interesting here.
Oh, that's a lot of deaths.
Yes, there are a lot of deaths, and I will bring up quite a few of them as we go through here. So I'm just gonna take it right off the bat here. I am gonna take Joffrey Baratheon as the number one overall pick.
Okay.
I was very happy to see him go.
All right. In that case, I feel like I might snipe Brad on this one, but I'm going to go with Hans Gruber.
Oh, thank God.
So I left Hans off my list because I really loved his character.
Yeah, I went back and forth on that one. I have him as number 2 on my list, but like satisfying, I don't know. It's
The way that, I mean, it's very memorable the way
Oh,
that he died.
yes.
And
Yes.
so, again, this is a category you can take a million different directions.
Well, and that's why I
So
do
it's all
have him
interpretation.
Yep.
That's what
second.
opens it up for discussion when we pick these. So,
And when
But
I did my list, I tried to think of characters that I really didn't like. And so there are a ton of bad guys in movies, and it's like I actually like that character, kind of pulling for him a little bit. So I tried to pick, people that I thought were pretty despicable, and then were satisfied with their eventual death.
Well, my number 1 and the correct answer
Mhm.
and the most satisfying death I've ever seen is Count Rugen in The Princess Bride, the death of the
Ah.
six-fingered man.
Yes.
I'll give you
Nice.
anything. What do you want? I want my father back, you son of a bitch. Oh my God, that is the greatest scene from the greatest movie,
Sure.
and that's the answer.
That is
All right.
a very,
Okay.
very good answer. All right. I think I'm going to go with, God, there's so many good ones. I'm going to go with one that everybody hates this guy, I'm assuming. I'm going to go with the death of Hitler in Inglorious Bastards. When they just
Okay.
continue to shoot him and his body and face are just being ripped apart by bullets. That was a satisfying way for him to
I
go
didn't have
out.
that on my list, but that's a really good answer
Thank you.
because it brings you into like only if it was real life, it
Yes.
makes it even more.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to argue that one because it will sound really bad if we dispute.
Hitler? No way, man.
It's not as good as Count Rugen, but
No, that's upset.
All right. My next one is another bad guy and fits your original description.
Mhm.
I have Gus from Breaking Bad.
Ah,
The
God.
way that they
very good.
the way they built up to that and the way it happened, it was I thought that actually should have been my number 1 pick, but I still was able to get it.
I
didn't
have
see
him
you
on
pick-
my list, and he is not my number 1 pick for that show.
Well, so my question was, what I was going to do is take 2-for-1
Oh,
From that.
Yeah. Yep.
scene because not only does he die, but so does Hector Salamanca,
Yep.
who's
The old
annoyed the
guy.
shit out of you for series with that
Right.
bell.
Yeah.
I always got a
That's
kick
why-
out of Hector. I
I
always
think you
kinda
can
laughed
take
at
that
Hector.
as a second. You
Yeah.
can make that your own pick because
Well, I
it's
can. Now I'm
it's the
trying to
second
decide if I
character
should.
that died.
It's a great answer if you include them both because that's what's so great. You knock out
Sure.
2 and 1. All right. Well, that makes it harder, I guess. Well, yeah, I'm gonna go with Hector. because
Okay.
that would have been one of the next ones on my list. And that guy was so annoying.
Sure.
And it was such a satisfying scene because even when you hate him, I mean, him ringing the bell to ignite it, like it was, oh my God, that was so awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh man. So I'm going to take a guy that I found very despicable and did not care for him in this movie. And his death is still one of the best deaths that I've ever seen in any movie. I'm going with Jimmy from Roadhouse when he gets his throat ripped out by Dalton.
All right. I'm with you. My next one, I think this might be the third episode in a row that I brought this movie up. But this one really fits the category. I'm going with Jaws, the shark.
Bruce.
Uh,
Yes, I have him on my list. Excellent pick.
Jaws the
Because
shark.
of the Jaws the shark.
It's Bruce.
You know. I mean, just because there again, the way that they built up to it and that sort of long drawn out scene,
Mhm.
and I say drawn out, it sounds like it's a bad way, but it's so good.
Yep.
So perfectly done. The way it builds up to it, it's amazing.
And he's
So, I'm
sinking
going
into
with-
the water, and then of
Yeah,
course
yeah.
when there's a big explosion like that, I mean, what a great death scene when he gets when he explodes.
God, I think
I love
got
that pick, Pete. I had that on my list.
Yeah, I got a good
All right.
list, but Pete's taking a lead here. He's doing a good job.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to take another guy who you might not think of a villain as much, but it's one of the greatest movies ever made, and he was despicable. And when he finally decides to kill himself, it is so satisfying. And that is the warden on the Shawshank Redemption.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm doing good too this time.
You are. I think we're all doing pretty good. I mean, I had Hitler on my list for God's sake. All right. Excellent pick. I'm going to go for a little bit of a twofer here. So, only one death, but because of the act of the killing, another person gets his comeuppance as well. I'm going to go with Wild Bill Wharton from The Green Mile. When Percy kills him, of course, he's the one who actually did the murdering that put John Coffey in prison. He's a horrible individual. We've got Percy who kills him, and then Percy ends up in the loony bin after that. So I'm going with Wild Bill.
Is that
right.
Sam Rockwell?
Yes.
Okay.
I am actually sticking so far. This is going to be my fourth pick. I continue to stick with the villain theme. So I'm
Mhm.
able to adjust on the fly because there's so little overlap with my list. And this is a little bit of recency bias, but again, it's such a good TV show. And we just went through it. I'm going with Lorne Malvo in
Yes.
Fargo.
Thought of that one. Yeah.
I should know this because I just watched it. How did he die?
He's shot
Colin
by-
Hanks' character
Yeah.
shot him.
Col-
Colin Hanks.
Oh, Colin Hanks. Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
He came
the
back
cabin.
in the cabin.
That's
Or-
right, in the cabin.
He-
Okay, I just totally blanked on what happened there.
Mhm.
Well, and that's some of these that I have listed. It's not only a great person who died, but it's the person who killed them that made it even more satisfying.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, oh boy, God, there are so many. I am gonna see. I got some funny ones, but they're still good answers. But I got a good list going, so I'm gonna try to keep it going here. I'm gonna pick. God dang it! Not Voldemort, but Bellatrix Lestrange. She was killed by Mother Weasley, which makes for a great ending.
Oh boy.
You know, protecting those kids.
All right.
All right. So I've got one I really
And
want to take,
Bellatrix Lestrange is so annoying. My God.
but I'm going to leave him off because I've already got one from Game of Thrones. So I am going to take the chief guard from the Temple of Doom. So this is the guy down in the mine whipping the children, gets into a fight with Indy and ends up being smashed to death in the rollers of the rock thing. So he gets pulled down into the rollers, and you see his blood come around on the wheels. So I'm taking that one. That was a pretty satisfying death.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go just because I think I have a good list. I'm gonna go with probably the most famous one of all time, and fits this category. A villain fits your category.
Okay.
I'm going with Darth Vader.
Okay.
The way he dies with Luke, after everything that's happened, it was a nice ending. And so the way he takes off his mask so we could see him one last time, and then he dies. So there you go, rounding out my list.
All right, Brad, what do you got for our last pick? There's so many great ones out there.
I know. They're all like the same to me though, so it's really hard to pick. I don't know. We just talked about this show or this movie, and I hated this guy, so I'm gonna pick that one, Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. I love when he gets shot. I love when you find out it was the cop who shot him. He's such an asshole. He's just such a loudmouth idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna pick Mr. Blonde.
Very good. Well, we got two from Quentin Tarantino movies. A lot of death in Quentin Tarantino movies, and we got two picks from. So that's outstanding. You guys got anything else? I got quite a few other ones.
Oh, I got more.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a few, but go
All
ahead,
right.
Brad.
Well, I got. I wanted to pick one of my favorite movies is Cape Fear, Max Cady, at the end.
Yep.
Especially after he does all that horrible stuff on the boat, he gets burned alive. Like that's great. I got Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
Very good.
That's a good one. I got. It's not really satisfying necessarily in the movie, but looking back, it's satisfying to watch OJ die at the end of The Naked Gun.
I have a different one from the same.
I got Dewey's dad in Walk Hard, especially because he's such a dick and he does it to himself. He cuts himself in half and learns a lesson. He never realized how easy it is to cut yourself in half.
Mm-hmm.
I do have Voldemort on here. I'm surprised none of us said I could have picked El Guapo. I thought one of you might pick El Guapo.
Oh, I didn't like.
That would have been.
That was the. It wasn't.
That's a good trick too. No.
Yeah.
I picked Hector. I could have also picked Lalo Salamanca on Better Call Saul. But I felt like it was kind of quick. It wasn't so satisfying the way he died. But the one actually that I hated Chuck. And so when they finally killed him off, I was elated that he was done on the show. Two more. Gifford, the show Lost. Ethan was an annoying character, and he gets killed by Charlie, which you love Charlie.
Yep.
And then finally, this is kind of fits what Pete asked. I got Thelma and Louise on here, which they're not villains, and you love them, but it's like you feel like that's the way the movie had to end. And it's like they wanted, and so you're like satisfied for them that they got the ending that they insisted on. And so that I put it at the end of my list because it was a little different, but like it's a very famous death. And even though they die and it's sad, you still kind of feel satisfied at the end, I feel like.
Sure.
All right.
Excellent. Pete,
That's
what do you got?
One I have from the same movie that you had listed, but a different character. I had Vincent Ludwig, played by Ricardo Montalban, who falls off a stadium and then gets run over by a
My
steamroller.
dad went the same way.
And then, and then the USC marching band.
That's a good one. Right before OJ.
So my next one, actually my next seven, I had Tony / Andre Demira. For quantity,
7.
satisfying to get 7 deaths out of that one actor that we've had on this show. I also had, going completely different direction, James Earl Jones as Terrence Mann at the end of Field of Dreams, where he walks into the cornfield.
Interesting.
So I also had Voldemort. I had the old guy in Clerks in the bathroom. It doesn't get
Well,
much
it's
more satisfying
way
than
more
that.
satisfying for what's her face.
They draw the biggest
That's
titties
right.
in these things.
Exactly. And then one from TV that I had that might be a little less known for you guys. And it was a very sad death, but the way that they did it was really well done. I didn't watch the show a ton, but I watched it enough. Dr. Green, played by Anthony Edwards on ER. So in the show, he had been battling cancer like brain cancer for the entire last season. And then the way that they did that last episode that he was on was beautifully done. I think he was in Hawaii, and they played the Hawaiian version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and the way they did it was good. So that's where it's very different than your villain theme. But when you think satisfying how it ended, that's what I had on my list. That is my entire list.
Well, one that I wanted to take, but I said I already had one from Game of Thrones, is Ramsay Snow or Ramsay Bolton. He's such a horrible character. You guys got to look at him in the episode we covered tonight. Viserys Targaryen, Daenerys's brother, when he gets the gold poured down his mouth or over his head, that was awesome. And then, of course, Tywin Lannister being shot by Tyrion while he's on the pot. That was a good one. I also got Jed from Pulp Fiction. We got Commodus from Gladiator, Joaquin Phoenix's character. That was a very satisfying prick to see go. Johnny Ringo from Tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Roth played a character Cunningham in Rob Roy. That was a pretty satisfying sword fight at the end, and Liam Neeson's character knocking him off. Sylvester Stallone movie Cobra, the night slasher, in the final fight scene gets a big meat hook shoved through his back, and he's writhing in pain as he's it's on an automated line, and he's pulled into a furnace. That's a pretty satisfying death scene right there for a despicable character. I took the chief guard from Temple of Doom, but also Molaram from Temple of Doom, where he gets thrown off the ladder and down into the river, and all the alligators are eating him and spinning around, and that's a good way for that guy to go. I took Aziz from True Lies, when he gets shot off of the Harrier jet through the building and into the helicopter of some more bad guys. I like that one. The T-1000 from Terminator 2. This one is for the boys from Surely You Can't Be Serious. The general in the first Lethal Weapon movie, where he's in a burning car and he's trying to get a hold of the hand grenades, and then the whole car explodes around him. That was awesome. I picked Jimmy from Roadhouse, but also Brad Garrett's death at the end of that movie, where all the townsfolk come around and take, shotgun blasts at him to kill him. That was a very
You would think
satisfying.
that'd be your number one. You hated that guy.
I did hate that guy. You guys took quite a few from Breaking Bad. My favorite from Breaking Bad was Uncle Jack and his entire crew at the end of that series, where he sets up the gun to mow them all down.
At the very end.
Yeah. Those guys, they kept Jesse captive, and, all the horrible things they did to him. So I was very happy to see Uncle Jack go. And then you took Lauren Melvo in season 1 of Fargo. I'm going with Sam Hess. That guy was a complete and utter D-bag.
Oh, yeah.
And I really loved when he got knocked off. So that is my list.
That was early on. That was episode 1.
That was episode 1.
That put it all in motion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, well, I thank you guys for sitting down and watching this episode, and let me broaden your horizons with some medieval fantasy. So,
hey, Gifford, do you know what band will never die?
Preacher Row.
Wait, I think we reached the end of something first.
We got to close the yearbook.
Yeah,
on 2014.
Good Sorry,
good catch
Paige.
there, Brad.
What are we gonna open it up to next month?
What is it? 1998?
1998.
Some good stuff
right.
in 98, folks.
That's a great time.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Time
it
to
is.
be alive.
Well, thanks for listening,
Yeah.
everybody.
Here is Preacher Row.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Next time, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.